All right, good afternoon, everybody. We really appreciate you joining us today. In the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the 2019 Green Purchasing Technical Assistance Fund report. This is the report out from some of the 2019 GPTAF recipients. We have a really great presentation for you today. I have a couple of slides that I want to get to. I'm going to do it really quickly so that we can get in today's presentation. We have a lot of really awesome presenters today, so I don't want to take their time from them. First of all, we want your feedback. After this presentation, you're going to have a window pop up that's got a survey. There's 6 questions on it. It takes all of 5 minutes, and it really helps us improve these presentations, these webinars. Really like it if you take a second, just fill this out to the best of your ability, give us some feedback, help us to improve. Also, you're going to have a question and answer feature at the bottom of the webinar screen there. We invite you to please participate, ask questions to our presenters. We're going to wait until after they're done presenting. Each one, we have 4 wonderful presenters. At the end of each presentation, we'll have time for a couple questions. In the interest of time, I'll keep things moving along. And then at the end, if we have more time for questions, we'll address them then. You can also email myself, kminer@naspo.org. I'll put that in the chat function. And I can put you in touch with our presenters or help ask you any of your questions. So we at NASPO, we have a board-approved policy for sustainability, and we aim to leverage the purchasing power of state government to create sustainability, conserve energy and national resources, and limit environmental pollution and waste, and improve public health, and encourage clean technologies, and create cost-saving opportunities. So, in keeping with this philosophy, each year our board budgets a specific amount of funds to be distributed fairly and to be used by individual state procurement offices for professional services to assist in establishing, implementing, and enhancing sustainable purchasing in their state. We say a specific balance because each year the balance could be different, although in the past, normally it is $100,000, and each state is can receive up to $10,000 for their sustainable initiatives. The criteria, things that we look for when we are reviewing applications are environmental. So this is, does the project promote environmentally conscious purchasing for goods and services? We look at economic impact. Does this project create cost saving and best value for the state and for its citizens over time, right? Does this project promote and or utilize principles of sustainability? Cost. Does this project maximize the value and available funds and drive cost value over time? Transferability. Can this project be transferred to another state? Creativity. Is this project novel, inventive, and or progressive? These are the things that we look at when we are reviewing a membership application. So how do you access that application? You go to the NASPO network, go right here to the resource tab and down to the Green Purchasing Technical Assistance Fund. And that'll take you to this page. And here you can download the policy and application. Both of those must be acknowledged and signed by the NASPO primary member. That tells us that they looked at the policy and agreed to it, and they have looked at the application after it's been filled out to make sure everything's in the right place. We have infographics that will show you projects from previous years, go all the way back from 2016. They're just little summaries, things that might help spark your creativity. We have a tip sheet. That's basically just the policy summary sheet. It just is a very quick overview of all the things that you're going to find in the policy and guidelines. And then we have recordings, which is where this webinar will be afterwards. It's our YouTube page that has all of our past green webinars. The learning objectives for today are to gain a better understanding of how to utilize the 2020 GPTAF that opened on February 3rd, and we're accepting applications all the way to October 1st. So I strongly encourage you, if you're a NASPO member, to take advantage of these funds. We also are going to learn what other states across all regions are doing to further their sustainability initiative. And most importantly, we encourage you to interact and ask questions regarding approved projects and, in general, sustainability. So, with that being said, I think I've talked long enough. I would like to invite Emily to share her screen. While she is doing that, Emily Soon-Torn-Seratoul has been with Maryland Department of General Services for almost 7 years, working in the Office of Energy and Sustainability. She oversees the statewide energy data tracking program, and for the past year has also served as chair of Maryland Green Purchasing Committee. She is a PMI certified project management professional and an ACCO certified climate change professional. Emily, take it away.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you for organizing this. And thanks to NASPO for offering this program, which is great. So I will start with a little background on green purchasing in the state of Maryland. Let me make sure this is going. Okay. I'll talk about the need that led us to developing the grant application and kind of how we put that together. I'll touch really briefly on the project, but I'm happy to talk more in depth if anyone wants to follow up with me. And then just sort of the next steps for us. So Maryland has a strong foundation for green purchasing, including statute that established an interagency Green Purchasing Committee, or we call GPC. And the GPC holds quarterly meetings that are open to the public, maintains best practices, provides training, and reports by statute annually to the Governor and General Assembly. Maryland also has several laws and regulations that guide green procurement. I'm not going to get into those, but if you're interested in learning more, that annual report image is a hyperlink. If you click on it, you should be able to see the full report that includes a lot more detail. So we have a history of a strong program, but several years into the program, it essentially went into a kind of hibernation. And maybe other public sector folks understand this. We had some loss of staff and leadership turnover and essentially lost our champions. Then in 2018, we had new leadership and staffing, and it led to a kind of revitalization of the committee. That's when I came on board, and it's when green purchasing became a focus again of the administration. So all of this kind of put us in an interesting situation, which was the groundwork for a program was already laid. We had new leadership who was excited about it. The committee itself was revived. It was now comprised of mostly new members who had not necessarily done anything related to green purchasing before. And then we had something very interesting, which is a statewide procurement reform. That was our governor's initiative to modernize state procurement. And I won't get into that, but it's just to say we're kind of in this transition period, which could mean a lot of opportunity. So the real question was just, where do we go from here? What are we doing? So just kind of like being introspective led us to figure out what our needs were and articulate that we know we need a plan. We know we need technical expertise that we're not sure if we have all of in-house, and we need help rejuvenating that program so that it can get back to being active and productive. And of course, we can't really do any of that without some funds to kickstart it. So we reached out to the Responsible Purchasing Network, who are absolutely wonderful, and started a discussion that kind of led to figuring out that there was such a thing that we could apply for. thanks to NASPO, and discussing what the goals were, what the problems were, the possible directions we could go to kind of define that. And we were very excited to be awarded the grant with the funds from NASPO and the consultant at RPN providing the technical expertise. And then on our side, the commitment of leadership and staff at DGS, we were able to work on the next steps for the Maryland Green Purchasing Committee. So I'll talk a little bit about the project itself now. If you're thinking about putting together an application, this is what we did prior to submitting the application. So we defined the goals and deliverables to actually put into that grant application. So the goals were to assess basically where we are and how we're going to improve. We wanted some real practical tools and we needed a plan of attack. Then the goals were mapped to concrete deliverables that RPN would provide to us under the project scope. And I'll just talk briefly about these first 3 deliverables. So the first deliverable was program design recommendations. RPN conducted a benchmarking assessment for us and wrote a number of recommendations. And I mean pages and pages. It was actually very, very useful. Based on what other states were doing, what Maryland was doing well, and where opportunities existed for improvement. The second deliverable was really practical, sustainable purchasing tools that we could begin to put to use to make progress and give us kind of like easy wins. So RPN developed some boilerplate language to be included in our contracts and solicitations. Things like the state's overall commitment to sustainable purchasing, applicable laws, and vendor reporting requirements. RPN also developed a procurement checklist. This was meant to kind of embed sustainability into the procurement process and work towards making it the default. So the idea is that if a procurement officer is doing a solicitation, they'll say, okay, this is for de-icers. Did I check to see if we have a Green Purchasing Committee approved spec for de-icers? You know, yes or no. If not, check it out. Here it is. And did I use that spec? If I didn't, you know, explain why. And then also extremely helpful tool were these vendor data templates. So these were templates for reporting that the vendors use to report their green spend and identify products that meet approved eco labels and recycled content percentages, so that we can kind of pull that all together and have numbers for our EPP. And we've actually used those templates once already to collect data for our 2019 annual report back in September. And finally, the major deliverable was this Green Purchasing Action Plan. And this plan took the recommendations of the original program design recommendations and mapped them to concrete items, like concrete tasks with defined target timelines. So we worked back and forth with RPN to lay out schedules for these tasks and what we could kind of undertake in the next fiscal year, broken down by quarter, and then also the next 2 years out. So a lot of benefits from the work we were able to do with this grant. I mean, first is just compliance with statute, which is clearly very, very important. But also the knowledge of what we were already doing with green purchasing. We just needed to get a handle on our data to even establish a baseline and to know what we're already buying that's green so we can make goals for how to improve. We're also just able to talk more knowledgeably about what we do and to promote the things we do well, which our leadership likes, and including the ability to apply for awards that we may not be able to pursue if we did not have the data to back it up. So the next steps for Maryland are to keep tailoring our action plan, reviewing and revising as necessary, and synthesizing the recommendations with the GPC's vision and mission statements. We're also putting the tools that were developed to work, so we're actually beginning to get the boilerplate language into our new contracts and using those vendor reporting forms to collect data more regularly from our vendors. We're also putting new practices to work. So we're integrating, or we are and will be doing more of this, integrating goal setting into the routine work of the Green Purchasing Committee so that we're continuously reviewing what we've done, assessing where we are and where we want to go. And because we've made this giant workload for ourselves, we've also established subcommittees to tackle topic-specific work and do more of the actual hands-on work. And that is all that I have. So I think we can do questions.
Yeah, thank you, Emily. We do have a question from Mark Hayden. We'll take questions quickly. Mark asks, does Maryland have a definition for sustainable or sustainability?
Does Maryland have a definition for sustainability? Maryland uses different language actually. For some reason, and maybe it's just like the time that things were developed with the Green Purchasing Committee, but under the Maryland Green Act in 2010, green purchasing is the term that was defined and is in statute. So not necessarily sustainability.
Okay. Okay, and Mark has a follow-up question. Did Maryland create new procurements for sustainable products or the products identified after the procurement was completed? And if you created new procurements, RFPs and ITBs, could you send the templates to Mark? And Mark, I can get with you offline to get those templates. But you, Emily, can you see the first part of his question?
I can't see the question. Oh, I see it now. I'm sorry.
No problem.
We are working on greening existing contracts and resolicitations. We have not yet done an entirely new green solicitation, so just entirely replacing a conventional contract with a just green contract, but it's something we're looking into.
Excellent. Thank you, Emily.
Sure.
I know that if we could hear all of our attendees, it would be thunderous applause right now. Okay, our next presenter is Tina Simsich. Tina, are you there?
I am here.
While Tina is getting ready, I would like to introduce her. She is the Environmentally Preferable Purchasing Coordinator at the Washington State Department of Ecology. She works with the State Procurement Agency directly, the Department of Enterprise Services, to incorporate sustainability specifications into state purchasing contracts. Tina also works with state cabinet agencies to implement the solid waste and toxic reduction initiatives in her governor's Executive Order 20-01, State Efficiencies and Environmental Performance. Tina spends much time as possible hiking and gardening in the beautiful Pacific Northwest. Tina, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you, Emily, for that great presentation. And thanks to NASPO for the funding that is enabling us to move forward. Cheryl Mankey from the Department of Enterprise Services who's been the lead at the State Procurement Agency on this, wasn't available today. So she asked me to, co-partner with her as we do on this presentation. And so I wanted to start out by saying that one of the great things about this grant process is that it kind of forces your group, whoever is in your group that's trying forward EPP in your state, to really focus on what are the needs that you have that you might need outside assistance on. And that is sort of a process that I think that is helpful for you to ID priorities. So in this last round, DES and ecology worked together and identified the need for a help writing the new EPP chapter of the new state procurement manual, which is a very big undertaking. So we applied for the funds to help the state cover the costs of a firm that knows sustainable procurement really well and how to integrate it into public procurement, has experience developing guides for other states, understands today's leadership practices across the nation, and can create something shareable with other states, which is one of the NASPO criteria. So we went through that thinking process and submitted, and once we were approved, conducted a mini competition after we had reached out to a few different firms, and as Marilyn did, selected the Responsible Purchasing Network to be our consultant. Our scope of work has similarities to what Marilyn did. The key part of it is to provide current best practices, including model specification language. The second really key part of this is interviewing a group of key stakeholders, both in state agencies, a couple of local procurement entities, and obviously several people from enterprise services, a few people from ecology that have been partnering with DES for a long time on this, and then most likely some vendors. And I should probably say right here that I think we're probably different than the other states in that we started the actual work in January. So we are about a third of the way through the actual work that the funds have allowed us to do. So we don't have, I'm not going to be describing results. I'm going to be describing what we are hoping to accomplish. So the rest of the scope of the work is benchmarking our current accomplishments. We were really helped with that by last year participating in the Sustainable Purchasing Leadership Council benchmark process that really gave us a very strong view into, excuse me, what our current, excuse me, wait one second. Into our current strengths and weaknesses in this area. And then the other thing that RPN is going to be doing is summarizing relevant Washington legislation policies and executive orders for us. So why do we even need, I mean, since the key area of what we're doing is writing an EPP chapter of the procurement manual, why do we need to do that? There are several reasons. One is Ecology Enterprise Services have been collaborating for years to insert green specifications into state master contracts, but it's been a kind of one-on-one process. There is no central program or central landing spot for procurement officials to go to, and that's something that it is really needed. So it's not kind of a one-on-one working with Tina or someone else at Ecology, but it's more integrated. DES also has a need to develop, it has been working on developing state EPP policies that are statutorily required. And then, but I think the most important driver is that Governor Inslee issued an executive order 2 years ago, which was Executive Order -1801, which was reissued and re-signed in the January of this year as 2001 with a few updates, and that is called the State Efficiency and Environmental Performance, or SEEP, Executive Order. That created a governing council with staff at our Department of Commerce, and we have the 12 cabinet agencies are meeting monthly. The governor comes to every third meeting, and we have 6 work groups under that executive order, which are focused on reducing greenhouse gas emissions, toxics, and resource conservation for state agencies. So that's kind of what's pushing us forward. In our work with RPN, our primary goals are a one-stop, best-in-class place for staff to go to. The key elements of this are going to be how to conduct market research on safer alternatives to products and services that will reduce greenhouse gas emissions, toxics, and conserve resources. Model specifications for at least 10 commodity categories. Boilerplate language for contracts where it's applicable. How to use green certifications and standards, and sample bid sheets and vendor reporting templates. These are all things that needed to be developed so that procurement staff don't have to just have an easy one-stop place to go. And then the other piece is that RPN is going to be doing those interviews that I mentioned before, with the key piece of that being that we would get a greater understanding of the existing barriers to sustainable procurement and a roadmap for change management. So as I said, RPN is working hard to complete this by April. We are very fortunate to be able to piggyback off of some of the great work that other states have done and that RPN has done, so that's been hugely beneficial. We are working really hard to align this with what the work that's being done under the executive order and all the really great work that the enterprise services policy and training team are doing. Because when we launch in the spring, we will be socializing this, communicating, and the policy and training team will be assisting with online training, videos, and tools that will be integrated directly into the procurement manuals so that procurement officers will know that this is standard procedure. I see I'm almost out of time, so I just want to say, you know, our main goal is, you know, easy access and ease of use to EPP so that it becomes a natural part of people's work in procurement. And we just want to say that we're very grateful to NASPO for this opportunity. It is really something that we encourage all states to go for because it really helps you focus on what is the best next step that your state can take. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tina. Sorry that I was on mute. I was talking away and I couldn't, no one could even hear me. Thank you so much, Tina.
You're welcome.
So we have another question for Mark. And Mark, I'm going to ask the abbreviated question just because I want to keep this moving. But Tina, could you briefly discuss examples of green specs that were inserted into the state master contracts?
Yes,
actually. Could you please provide, and I'll provide copies to Mark too when he's done. So if you could just briefly discuss that before we turn it over to our next presenter.
Right. We are going to be looking at cleaning services, both janitorial service providers and direct state contract purchases for buying janitorial supplies. We are going to be looking at lighting and snow and de-icing. We may be looking at flooring, but it's not clear how much purchasing of flooring is actually happening off of state contracts. We will be looking, we're still in the midst of finalizing that list. So we're probably going to be looking at electronics. We may be looking at cloud solutions because we know that that's a big place where, you know, greenhouse gas emissions are happening. And that, I actually don't have that list right in front of me, but those are the big ones. And we can always share that list when we get to final. RPN is working on some of the other big chunks of the scope. So that's sort of the next step.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And again, if you have questions, you can reach out to Tina, Cheryl, or myself, and I can help get you connected. Thank you so much, Tina. That was really wonderful. Our next presenter is Melissa Peck. Melissa, are you with me?
I am now. I was muted, sorry.
Okay, that's okay. Melissa is a Sustainable Procurement Program Coordinator at the state of Minnesota within Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. Her background is in environmental policy and regulation, product stewardship, and chemical product regulatory compliance. One of her favorite parts about the job is calculating the positive impacts of the state of Minnesota's sustainable purchasing programs. So the state's GPTAF funded project for 2019 was especially exciting in her opinion. And I will let you hear more about that opinion right now, Melissa.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, this is very exciting for us. So thank you to NASPO as well for providing these funds that allows states to advance work within their sustainable purchasing programs that would otherwise go unfunded. We have had the benefit of, or at least I've had the benefit of reporting out on 2 of our Green Purchasing Technical Assistance Fund projects so far. I'm not sure. I believe the state has done some even before that. So yeah, thank you very much. I'm going to be presenting the information for my slides a little bit backwards from the way people have been doing it so far. First, I'm going to cover a little bit of background information on the state of Minnesota Sustainable Purchasing Program. And then I'll talk about how our project kind of came to be and where we saw a need. And then I'll tell you a little bit about what we included in our applications during the application process, the metrics and our next steps. So the state of Minnesota currently has a sustainable spend goal in an executive order. So it's solidified in statute, and we really value sustainability as a state overall. We have an Office of Enterprise Sustainability that's focused explicitly on increasing the sustainability of our state enterprise, and that is where this goal came from. Essentially, it's dictating that by 2025, 25% of our spend on certain contracts will be sustainable. And that set of contracts was determined in 2013 when we did a spend analysis looking at where we spend all of our money as a state and where we have the highest impact. And that spend analysis was done using EPA grants. And once that spend analysis was done, we had a list of priority contracts that included contracts within the categories of IT hardware, indoor building materials and furnishings, office supplies, and janitorial and maintenance supplies. There were other categories included that were higher than some of these, but they are outside of our scope of purchasing because we've decided to allow the Office of Enterprise Sustainability to kind of take the charge with those, and that includes things like energy efficiency of buildings, fossil fuels, things like that. So in order to work towards this goal, we have Sustainable Procurement Program, which is formalized within the Sustainable Procurement Charter. And that really just formalizes this partnership between the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency and the Department of Administration's Office of State Procurement. The two agencies have been working together since the 90s to increase in what we called back then environmentally preferable purchasing. Now we call it sustainable purchasing, and we have goals and metrics and just kind of a much more formalized program that came to be after that goal was laid out in the executive order. We have a number of other executive orders that direct kind of our work through this charter that are referenced as well. And one of the main priorities of the team working on this program is to work towards certain metrics, right? So we have these goals that we're working towards. We want to know whether or not we're making any progress on that. So even within our charter, we have metrics for success. That's kind of a higher level way of looking at things, that 25%. But then the charter also dictates how we include sustainability in our priority contracts. And that process is laid out in our framework for developing sustainable contracts. Within that framework, we have a measurement component as well because, you know, as I mentioned, we have a goal to work towards. We need to know how we're doing and working towards that goal. And also we want to use this information just to know what we're doing and know where we can improve, right? And you can't do that without data. So we include a measurement aspect in every one of our priority contracts that goes out for bid. And essentially what that looks like is we ask vendors to provide data on what is being purchased off of their contracts. Some challenges, though, are faced when you ask something like that of vendors, right? So there are 19 contracts that are included in that set of priority contracts, and they cross many different buyers at our Office of State Procurement. The vendors only have to report, you know, once a year for some of these contracts, so they forget how to report back. And at present, vendors and staff both struggle with data collection for contracts. The staff have to contend with like mailed in data reports, handwritten data reports, inaccurate data reports, missing data. We're not sure whether or not it's accurate at all. And oftentimes the condition that the data comes to us is just, it's unusable. So we have to follow up with the vendor anyways. And really it's a huge time sink. Last year, I was collecting data in calendar year 2019 for fiscal year 2018. And it took me weeks to get through all of the data to look line by line and determine whether or not the products being purchased were sustainable. And outside of that, it took months, like months and months and months to get all of the reports back from the vendors even, just so that I could go through the data. So it requires a lot of time and resources, not just from me, but from our Department of Administration's Office of State Procurement as well. One other way that we use the data that's collected is to calculate our environmental impacts. And this really helps us make the argument for why our sustainable procurement program is important. People love seeing data, people love seeing numbers and impacts in a way that's understandable for them. This is really, really easily digestible by a lot of people. So, and I think this is fiscal year 2017, so you'll have to excuse me, I did not update this yet. But in that fiscal year, we calculated that we conserved about 4.4 million gallons of water. We conserved 45.7 million kilowatt hours, prevented 8,282 metric tons of CO2 equivalents, and we saved $2.5 million in energy costs. So no matter who you're talking to, that's a pretty persuasive point about why sustainable purchasing is important. And we cannot make these calculations without the data that we're currently spending months trying to collect and then decipher. Yes, so that brings me to what we applied for. In order to get this data more easily, hopefully, we are currently at a point where we're just about to launch. So we have not reached the end of our project yet. We're actually pretty far from the end of our project, and this is just a pilot anyways. But what we did was we did a lot of research and determined that a reporting tool would be of great assistance to us in collecting this information that we need to report out on our program. We decided on the B2G Now platform, which is business to government. I think a couple other state government and local governmental entities have used this platform as well for similar purposes. This we're only using one module that B2G offers, and that's the data tracking. So essentially what this reporting tool is going to do is allow us to more easily ask vendors for the data that we're requesting, more easily remind them, and have it all go into a more structured, uniform system. So we're thinking that this should lead to solving a lot of the challenges we've been facing with reporting, such as more timely reporting, because it's easy to remind the vendors. And we think that the vendors are going to appreciate the uniform system, support provided by B2G, the automated reminders. So we really think that it's a win-win from the state and vendor perspective. So yeah, we're thinking that this automated tool is really going to help us monitor not only how we're doing in moving towards our goals on sustainability, but also whether or not vendors are complying with our sustainability requirements and contracts. It will allow us to gather data that can hit on some of those impact spend points as well. And it should actually assist with engagement within the state, so within different agencies where we're seeing less sustainable purchases, we can reach out and do individual outreach to talk to them about how to make more sustainable purchases. Not only that, data collection is a pain point for a lot of state programs, not just the state of Minnesota. So we're hoping that continued demand for reporting tools, which allows for increased vendor transparency around sustainability, will increase the availability of such tools, right? That supply demand, it makes sense. And normalization of vendor data requests to increase sustainability transparency is really necessary to move the needle on sustainability generally. So we're hoping that by pushing forward on vendor reporting that, you know, some of these benefits will be felt outside of the state of Minnesota as well, and just in the sustainable purchasing market as a whole. So as I mentioned, we're not quite even to launch yet, but we are currently training a small subset of staff on how to go into the program and navigate it. And we have buyers currently in contact with different vendors, trying to get them to agree to enter their data into the system, because right now it is voluntary. We have not included terms in the priority contracts yet, putting that in as a requirement. So I think that that is all I had. just one last thank you to NASPO for providing us with the opportunity to do this. We think it's going to save us a lot of time, energy, effort, and ultimately taxpayer money. So we're pretty excited about the future of this project, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I know we're running a little low on time, but.
No, Melissa, that's totally fine. And thank you very much for the presentation. It was wonderful. We do have a question from Mark. Do you rely entirely on vendors to identify what products are sustainable? And how do you calculate water, electricity, energy, CO2 savings? Is the B2G Now platform populated by vendors? You can actually see this question,
I
Melissa.
see it now.
It's a really long one. I just want to make sure if you just want to maybe briefly go over a couple of those things.
Yeah, we do not rely on the vendors at all to identify what products are sustainable. What we do is within our request for proposals, within our RFPs or our bids or whatever, however we're going out to solicitation, we require sustainability standards. So for instance, with sustainable foodware is something that's coming up again right now, or sustainable, excuse me, compostable foodware, I should say, is going to be up for bid right now. So we look at, okay, where is the market at? What are the highest level sustainability standards right now that we could require or prefer? And so we either require that vendors provide products that meet with a certain certification or that meet general specifications. So general specification example would be that they have to contain 30% recycled content, or a certification would be that, you know, they have to be Green Seal certified. So we do the market research and determine what's sustainable in that product category up front, and then we require it. And that's why on the back end, we have to gather all that data, because I have to make sure that vendors are actually complying with that requirement that we put in place in the beginning. And then how we calculate water, electricity, energy, CO2, we are only calculating that for paper purchases and for IT hardware purchases, because there are calculators online that you can use to calculate that. And I'm happy to send that out if that's of interest. I guess just reach out to Kevin and let him know, or I think my information's on NASPO as well, so feel free to reach out to me there.
Yeah, absolutely. And
yeah.
you can email me, or I will happily connect you with Melissa as well. So thank you so much, Melissa.
Yeah. Really
appreciate that. And yeah, again, these are all great questions. Happy to send out the slides post presentation, as well as to connect offline. We just don't have a lot of time left, and I know some of these questions are you know, this is complex, heavy material. So we might go just a few minutes over. We understand that if you have to hop off, but we encourage you to please, stay on for the whole presentation. So thank you again, Melissa. And next up we have Amy Farnham. Get Melissa, if you'll stop sharing. Awesome. Yeah, so we have a question. Does the program reimburse for buyer staff time related to putting out RFP for a green product service? I can answer that. We do not reimburse for staff time, staff salary. These are reimbursements for a number of things, but for staff time is not one of the areas that we reimburse for. So, and all that information is in the policy. Again, I'm happy to connect with you offline. So Amy, are you with us?
I am here.
All right, Amy, great. If you'll go ahead and share your screen.
Were you going to send me a link to have access of your screen?
Oh yeah, I was. We had this conversation before, and then I forgot that works out well though. Excuse us just a minute, everyone. Amy, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, you should have control. And I would like to quickly introduce her. Amy has been the program administrator for sustainable materials management, the state of New Hampshire, since 2016. In that role, she works with state agencies to reduce waste, reuse materials, recycle, and engage in sustainable procurement practices. She has also been an adjunct undergrad science instructor at South New Hampshire University for 10 years, teaching both majors and non-major courses. Her education spans both business and science disciplines, with a terminal degree in leadership for environmental and social sustainability. Amy, how'd I do?
Nice. Very good.
I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
I wanted to note a couple things on the title slide here. First, the EPP is underlined. I'll speak to that in a moment. And then also from the bio just read, we've branded the program that I oversee as R4, and I will discuss that in more detail in a moment as well. Uh-oh. It's not letting me change it now. Oh, there we go. Okay. So this is just our general purchasing unit mission statement. Very general and broad, but it does encompass the RSA or law that oversees my program, again, to be discussed in a moment. So basically, the value-added procurement, the goals and initiatives for our state, sustainability and green procurement or sustainable procurement is lumped into that. And there is a delay on my side with this, so I will try to change the slide.
Amy, you know what? You might just have to tell me to click next, and I'll go to your next slide. That's what it's looking like.
Oh, okay, you can go to next. So the first thing, anybody that's diving into this or that has been into it, there's a lot of terminology floating about. So the first thing that we kind of did when we rebranded my program and started diving deeper into the procurement aspect of it is to choose the terminology that we wanted to use. So I underlined environmentally preferable purchasing because that is the one that NASPO uses, and it is the one that a lot of states use, but we actually decided to go with sustainable procurement. And you can go to the next slide. So this is a graphic that I created to sort of speak to the four arms of my RSA, which a portion of it is cited there. Basically, it was designed as a circular economy sort of model where the idea is that upfront we reuse and reduce, and then if we have to recycle, we should be buying it back as recycled products. And there is language under the procurement part of that law that speaks to our obligation to be buying recycled content as much as possible, as well as just reducing the general impact of products overall, whether it's pollutants or toxins or whatnot. Getting back to the last slide, it's important to understand how our division is structured, because I think it's kind of unique and it actually lends kind of an interesting dynamic across my program and purchasing. I'm sitting next to the purchasing agents. And so we follow under the Department of Administrative Services, and then our division is called Procurement and Support Services. And there's 10 different units or areas under that, including purchasing, including my R4 fleet, real property, merchant cards, procurement cards, state surplus, federal food distribution, graphics, data control. The interesting thing, though, is that having all of those different units together kind of brings a systems perspective to it, because I'm speaking with graphics directly about their paper use, and I'm speaking directly with state surplus about their own policies and procedures for processing surplus state property. And then, of course, purchasing, we're working on the sustainable procurement management part of this in the contracts, contract design specifications, the products that we're trying to track on, which I'll speak more to in a moment. You can switch the slide, Kevin. So basically, if we're thinking about whether our project is done, I'm under the feeling that our project is never done. And this is sort of represented by the number of phases on here, which could be further broken out. But if we're speaking to the actual project that we applied for, what our project was in general, I'll get into it a bit more in a moment, is to kind of synthesize all the information that's already out there. So Sustainable Purchasing Council and NASPO and many, many other organizations and states have information already available, but it can become somewhat disjointed and it kind of has to be adapted to what your state needs. So that was our undertaking. And what we wanted to do, we didn't have a green guide, if you will. I'm actually calling it a green purchasing toolkit. Our project undertook developing a draft of that. So phase one was actually analyzing where we were. My RSA was passed in 2009. However, my position wasn't created until 2016, maybe 2015, but not hired until 16. So the law kind of fell under different programs overseeing those efforts to reduce waste and recycle and look at our green purchasing. There was a reporting aspect that was repealed in 2015 where all agencies were required to report annually on what they were recycling and to some degree what they were purchasing, although that was minor. Again, that was repealed in 2015, so we haven't done any official reporting since that. So on here, as part of this project was to reinstate the reporting framework. So that's phase 3, and it has already started. So phase 2 and phase 3 are going on simultaneously right now, where the toolkit's being refined, the reporting framework is being reinstated in a different structure. And that's going to depend more heavily on interaction with the vendors and leverage of the specs that we're putting into the contracts. And then just real briefly, there will be a timeline at the end of what all these phases look like and what we're seeing, but the main point is that this project was leveraged to develop or redevelop our strategy for what we're focused on this circularity of material use, basically. And thank you, NASPO, for this money, because I am the only person in my program, and time is my biggest constraint. So I was able to hire a consultant that would help me to develop that draft of the toolkit. You can change the slide. So our first step was just to take the continuum that Sustainable Purchasing Leadership Council has available. It's called the maturity model, and just sort of roughly graph ourselves, if you will, just to see how well we thought that we were doing. I'm not gonna say where we put ourselves, but this is a very useful process for reflecting on what the existing conditions are before you jump into what you need to do. You need to know what you've already done. Next slide. This is just speaking to the process of the grant. You're given a number of expense categories, and it's very important to align your project to these. And we actually use some of these keywords in describing what our project would be. Next slide. So again, it's what people kind of think of as a green guide. So there's sections with questions about how to start, how to put specs in contracts, and then there's hyperlinks all throughout of resources that people can go to get more information. This is just a snapshot of some of the ones that are embedded in the pages. It's currently a 50-page Word document with many gaps that I need to fill from our own information that the consultant wouldn't have enough insight into. Next slide. I'll finish that thought, but I'm actually in the process of translating that into a PowerPoint document, which will then be able to be put into PDF, because I feel like I'll be able to do more touch and go that'll be more user friendly. So again, to the process of the grant, this is actually some language from our application explaining what the project was and why we were asking for money. And again, speaking to limited resources, being just one person that's overseeing 4 different branches of sustainability behavior, time is definitely a constraint. Next slide. Kevin already touched on these 5, but again, it's important to make sure that when you're thinking about how you're laying out your application, that you're thinking about that you're hitting all of these and to the percentage that is being asked for. Next slide. So this was the very high level process of what we went through. We found consultants that would be willing to give us quotes, which went in with our application, and a detailed budget of how we expected hours to be put towards this project by the consultant, which was then verified by the quotes. We then needed to do specifications for a consulting contract because we don't use consultants very often in the state, so we had to draw up a contract, get that approved, and in that contract we had timeline, milestones, the budget obligations of the consultant, and then the quality of work. Kickoff meeting, phone calls. I kept track of phone time to cross-check her billing, and then she would give me regular timesheets. And then on the right-hand side are some of the milestones that we set forward in that contract. Next slide. This is part of the table of contents, so you can see some of the sections that are in there. Next slide. Another snippet on the left, and then our current status is that I'm, as I already said, working to convert into PowerPoint and finish that draft for phase 2 and fill in the gaps in content that need to be filled, such as the executive summary. Next slide. And then the last slide is our future condition. On the left-hand side, the 2, phase 1 and phase 2, and then what we expect to happen for date ranges for the remainder of optimizing our sustainable procurement. Kevin, I turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, and we apologize for that small technical difficulty, but I think Amy was able to get everything that she wanted to present. So, and do we have any questions for Amy? I know we're a little bit over time, but we're here. So if anybody has any questions, now is the time. Again, you can always contact me afterwards. Amy, I have a question for you, actually. You know, it's pretty impressive that you're over 4 different areas, kind of, you know, by yourself. Do you have, for the people that have stuck with us, perhaps there are people, hopefully there are individuals that are on with us today that are really just starting out and trying to get some ideas. Do you have any advice for those people as you went through this guide? Is there something that you learned for those programs that are just starting out?
Well, what I had already gathered myself was a huge folder of all the free resources, especially from you guys in SPLC, that I just did not have time to get through. I mean, like, there's so much available, but it's just individual documents or individual PowerPoints or individual webinars. And so what I did was I collected everything that I knew I had to go through, and I gave the whole thing to the consultant. And that was her task, was to organize that into something tangible that I can now give back to the agencies when I start reaching out for awareness about our support for their sustainable procurement or purchasing. And so just having a clear idea of where you're going, your vision, that was a word that Tina used that jumped out at me. I was actually there were so many connections between our presentations that it would be beneficial to go back through and listen to the whole recording again and pull out keywords, because we said a lot of the same things, and that was one of them, was planning and vision and starting, very low level, talking to people about what you need, looking for what's already out there. Like, a lot of that was covered throughout the different parts of the presentation.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. Really, a key takeaway of this presentation is, maybe perhaps we're focusing in slightly different areas, but there's so many common themes between all of these, and there are some other really good projects that we did not go over today, and we actually have those in our infographics on our website. If you have more questions about those, please feel free to contact me. But we really do see a lot of interconnectivity between these. So I know we're a little bit over time, but I really want to just take a moment to say thank you so much to all of our presenters and to all of our 2019 Green Purchasing Technical Assistance Funds awardees. We encourage you to please take this survey that's going to pop up as soon as we hop off here in a second, and to please consider applying for the funds this year. They run until October 1st, and you can access them on the website. I think another key takeaway for everybody today is that you don't necessarily have to be a NASPO member to fill out the form and to help pursue the project, but we just need the NASPO primary member to sign off. We need to have him or her involved throughout the process so that it is still a NASPO network community project. So with that being said, we're running a little bit over, so I will wrap it up. Please take the survey, and please contact me if you would like a copy of this presentation, and also if you would like a contact hour for UPPCC. So with that, if there are no more questions, let me once again just thank everybody so much for being on today. This is very important work, and it's only going to become more important as time moves forward. And let me please thank our panelists for presenting. They put a lot of effort into this, and we really, really appreciate them taking the time today. So with that, I will sign off, and we really, really appreciate it. And this will be recorded and put on YouTube. So if you'd like to see the recording, please email me and let me know.